Major Indian press, Hindustan Times, reported, quoting from Economic Times of India, that the tension between China and India and the problems that the tension has created has brought about for the Indian electronics industry $15 billion in losses. In addition, and this is, I think, even more significant and more painful, loss of 100,000 jobs. Now, India wants to grow. India wants to develop. India wants to become a dominant force, not only in Asia, but in the world. But at the same time, it's trying to do this by blocking out Chinese companies, Chinese investments, Chinese suppliers, and creating very difficult conditions, including blocking visas for Chinese workers going to India, Chinese engineers, Chinese investors. Can they do it without Chinese support or the Chinese suppliers and the Chinese investments that have flooded into India over the last decade? I think it's very difficult. And this is something beginning to be recognized by the media in India as well, naming 100,000 job loss. Now, this is in a population of 1.4 billion. It may not seem significant, but this is actually industrial jobs. This is actually jobs that creates higher value than farm workers. So 100,000, the significance can be much, much higher than 100,000 job loss in the countryside. I think India has to come to grips with the issue of running or growing together with China rather than blocking China out to protect its own industries. China has gone through the process and has succeeded in creating ever higher value products, going up the supply chain, going up the value chain, and going up the technology chain. I think India should come to grips with this. China is not trying to demolish India. China is not trying to compete with India. I think there's very little that India can do in competing with China in manufacturing in the world today. I think India would be wise to try to join the China supply chain and become part of a much bigger market, including the Chinese market and the ASEAN market. It's very clear the ASEAN countries, including countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Thailand, have happily joined the supply chain in China and also happily gained, therefore, also access to the Chinese market. Not only are they moving quickly in this market integration and supply chain integration with the Chinese market and the Chinese supply chain, their infrastructure is becoming more efficiently adapted to the Chinese infrastructure, including the new rail lines that's being built. Of course, Indonesia has adopted the Chinese standard of high-speed rail, but Vietnam and Cambodia and so on are now also adopting Chinese rail standards. Transportation can be a much more sophisticated network between China and the ASEAN countries, which will, of course, also enhance the efficiency of the supply chain. I think India should also consider doing the same, rather than blocking out Chinese investors, Chinese companies, or, as is known to many, that the business environment of imposing fines, freezing cash accounts of Chinese companies doesn't really induce or encourage Chinese investment into India. There was an article in Bloomberg on this very same subject, or part of this subject. The title of the article is "Modi's Jobs Crisis Can't Be Solved Without China." And it's interesting that Western press, like Bloomberg, is now identifying this problem or this issue. The article basically refers to the job crisis in India, with such a huge young population seeking advancement in their careers and creating the need to create higher value jobs to accommodate them. Now, The article basically refers to the fact that without Chinese investment, without Chinese companies' establishment of manufacturing or industrial jobs, it's going to be very difficult for Modi to accommodate the needs of creating higher value jobs for the young population in India. So this ties into what we were talking about before in terms of not only creating a greater market, also creating more industrial jobs, higher value jobs. And this is something that even the Western press is now beginning to address.